This day in sports history. It's June 17th, and on this day in 1994, it was a wild day in sports. The New York Rangers had their ticker tape parade in celebration of winning the Stanley Cup for the first time in 54 years. The Knicks were playing in Madison Square Garden in Game 5 of the NBA Finals against the Houston Rockets. The U.S. Open was being played at Oakmont, with Arnold Palmer playing his final round at a U.S. Open. And all those events were in the shadow of what was happening on the opposite coast with OJ Simpson. Oh, and the World Cup, which was being hosted in the U.S. that year, kicked off on this day. So let's start on the golf course with Arnold Palmer playing his final round at the U.S. Open. And it's pretty safe to say that golf would not have become as popular as it did without the personality and the influence of Arnold Palmer. Sure, Jack would have still been Jack and may have won a few more majors, but he just didn't have that magnetic smile and the charisma of the king. The 1994 U.S. Open was played at Oakmont, and that had been a special place for Arnie over the years. Of course, Arnie being from Latrobe, Oakmont was only 30 miles away, and he made his U.S. Open debut as an amateur there in 1953. He shot 84-78 and missed the cut by 9, but he would be back. When the Open returned to Oakmont in 1962, Palmer and Nicklaus battled it out in an 18-hole playoff that Nicklaus won by 3 shots. In 1973, Palmer was once again in contention on Sunday, but nobody was beating Johnny Miller and his final round 63 that year, and Palmer finished in a tie for 4th. In '83, a now 53-year-old Palmer was never in contention, but it was the last cut at a U.S. Open that he made. And now here he was on a farewell tour of sorts. He had not played in a U.S. Open since the one in '83, and he received a special exemption to play in this one. This was Friday, and Arnold was the focus of the day for ESPN's coverage. That is, when they weren't covering the unfolding OJ Simpson story, and more on that in just a second. Nobody cared how many shots he took. They just wanted to watch him walk the fairways, lash at the golf ball with his signature swing, mix a little lemonade with their tea, and toast Arnie as he passed. He 3-putted for bogey at the last hole and got a standing ovation. Arnie had tears in his eyes, as did just about everybody else watching. When an obviously emotional Palmer walked out of the scorer's tent, he walked over to Mark Rolfing for an interview.
Chris, Arnold Palmer, describe for me your thoughts walking up that last 150 yards to the 18th green.
That was pretty tough. You've played out here as long as I have. Just have to compose myself. Well, Mark, it's been 40 years. And when you walk up the 18th and you get an ovation like that, I guess that says it all.
Now, the thing is, the only reason that interview actually happened and made air is due to Chris Berman. ESPN was covering the opening of the World Cup, and they had a hard out at 3 p.m. Arnold did not walk out of the scorer's tent until 2:59, and Berman was supposed to throw it to Chicago, where Oprah, President Clinton, and others were standing by to open up the '94 World Cup. Instead, Berman, knowing how important it was going to be to hear from Palmer, pitched it to Rolfing against the wishes of producers who were screaming in his ear. Now, ESPN had been breaking into their coverage with the OJ story throughout the day. That morning, OJ had been charged with the murder of his wife, Nicole, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. He was not in the Bronco yet, but he was a wanted man. Palmer and OJ actually had sort of a connection. They were both pitchmen for Hertz rental cars and appeared in several commercials together, like this one.
See, I told you these classes wouldn't work. Uh-oh, now we'll never get out of here. I guess they're here for Hertz, not us. $99 a week for a Hertz car in Florida? Hard to beat. Especially with all the Hertz services.
Arnie, OJ.
At least someone wants our autograph.
The American Express card? Don't leave home without it.
Hertz, the #1 way to rent a car.
Later on in the evening on this day in '94, it was Game 5 of the NBA Finals between the Houston Rockets and the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden. The series was tied at 2 games apiece, but just like the golf coverage, this game would be interrupted. The Knicks had... We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you this special news bulletin. Football great Orenthal James Simpson is being pursued by a line of Los Angeles police vehicles. The chase is rolling slowly down the I-5 with Mr. Simpson riding as a passenger in a white Ford Bronco driven by his former Southern Cal and Buffalo Bills teammate Al Cowlings. Earlier this afternoon, Simpson was charged with murder in the deaths of ex-wife Nicole Brown and her friend Ronald Goldman. Simpson was scheduled to turn himself in at the Los Angeles Police Department this afternoon, but instead is now being pursued by the LAPD. The entire nation is enthralled. People have parked on the side of the highway, cheering on the man known as Juice. Millions on television are tuned in to watch this 60 miles long journey along the Santa Ana Freeway, Artesia Freeway, and the San Diego Freeway. The chase will eventually end in front of Simpson's Brentwood home just before 8 o'clock, when Simpson will surrender to the police and put in motion the trial of the century. We now return you to your scheduled program. The Knicks won 91-84 behind Patrick Ewing's 25 points and 12 rebounds, giving them a 3-2 lead in the series. The game seemed secondary to what was happening in LA, though. 95 million people across the country were mesmerized watching the low-speed chase as NBC went to a double box to show both the OJ car chase and the game. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. Okay, so I did say the World Cup started on this day in '94, but I'm going to go to another World Cup match that happened on this day in 1970 that many call the greatest match in World Cup history. This was a semifinal match between Italy and West Germany, played at Stadium Azteca in Mexico. The first 89 minutes of this match were fairly mundane, with Italy getting the first goal of the match 8 minutes in, and then held on to that 1-0 lead into the 90th minute. With Italy having conceded just 1 goal in their 4 matches so far, it seemed a pretty sure bet that the Italians would be moving on to the final. But the brick wall suddenly became an open floodgate. The West Germans found the equalizer 2 minutes into stoppage time, which sent the match into extra time. In the first minute of the first 15-minute OT, Franz Beckenbauer suffered a separated shoulder. Now, it could not be popped back in, and he could not be substituted for since the Germans had already used their 2 allowed subs. So he had to play wearing a sling, and he played in extreme pain. No worries though, West Germany's Gerd Müller scored the go-ahead goal in the 94th minute. 4 minutes later, Italy tied it back up, then took the lead again in the 104th minute. Müller scored his second in the second extra time period in the 110th minute, but the Italians responded immediately in the 111th minute with a goal by Johnny Rivera. And that was it. Italy won 4-3 to advance in the final after 5 combined goals in the extra time. A feat that had not happened before and has not happened since. And on this day in 2002, if you are a U.S. soccer fan, then all you need to hear is 2-0 to know what happened. It was a round of 16 match in the 2002 World Cup played that year in South Korea. The U.S. men's national team had advanced to the knockout stage after a stunning win over Portugal, a tie with the host country South Korea, and a loss to Poland. In their round of 16 match, they were paired up with their biggest rival, Mexico, on the biggest stage. Mexico had won their group with 2 wins and a draw. As the Americans got off the bus and walked into the stadium on this day, a few of the Mexican players were huddled together, and as they peered at the U.S. squad, they began to laugh. Now, the Americans did not know what was so funny or what they had been discussing, but it didn't matter. They saw that as a lack of respect and arrogance on the part of the Mexican players. Captain Claudio Reyna remembers thinking at that point, "We would get chances against Mexico. Sure, they were a strong team, they had just won their group, but we knew them inside and out and felt we could exploit them if we attacked." It didn't take long after kickoff to prove just how right that Claudio had been. In the 8th minute, the U.S. caught the Mexican team sleeping a bit, taking a quick free kick that resulted in Reyna attacking down the right side, turning it to the middle to Josh Wolf, who feathered a touch to Brian McBride all alone in the 18. His right foot rifle shot found the back of the net, and the U.S. led 1-0. The goal was a lightning bolt, providing energy for the U.S. and a stunning shock to the Mexican team. Reyna caused so many problems that the Mexican coach made his first substitution just 30 minutes into the game. The Mexicans kept the pressure on, though, forcing goalie Brad Friedel to make some tense saves. In the second half, the U.S. appeared to get away with a handball in the box when John O'Brien defended a corner. Now, in today's VAR world, that results in a PK chance for Mexico, but in 2002, that did not exist, and the referee didn't see it. So, they played on into the 65th minute when this happened.
Good ball. Perfectly into the path of Eddie Lewis on the charge. And Landon Donovan's in the middle to score the second goal for the USA. And double their lead with 20 minutes of the second half played. Huge goal. One that has them now firmly on course for a first ever win in the knockout stages of a World Cup.
It was indeed a huge goal, a perfectly placed cross to Landon Donovan, who hit the running header into the back of the net. Still a lot of time left, but Mexico was now reeling, and they lost their composure. A straight red card was handed out to Mexico's Rafael Marquez after spiking Kobe Jones in the side with a karate kick. Friedel continued repelling shots, and the U.S. was able to run out the clock to win 2-0. It was the first clean sheet for the U.S. in a World Cup match since their 1-0 win over England back in 1950. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. Now, I've always been fascinated by jellyfish, though I imagine that might change if I was ever stung by one. But jellyfish have no eyes, no brain, and no teeth. They use gravity to navigate their way around the ocean, and only about 5% of a jellyfish's body has mass. The rest is water, which allows some jellyfish species to be able to dive as much as 5 miles below the surface, where the pressure is incredibly intense. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.